I've been meaning to make this video for a while. Other things just kept getting in the way, and like most things, I really want to make things perfect. So that prevents me from doing them a lot. That prevents me from doing them at all. So I'm just going to do this whole fucking thing in one take because things get really slowed down for me during something like a Mars retrograde, where basically I'm almost moving backwards in some things, and this was one of them. This video was one of them. Retrograde was really important to me because of where Mars is in my chart, but also because this particular retrograde, the energy was unique. It was particularly aggressive, particularly violent. Some pretty fucked up things have happened, especially with Mars retrograding in Gemini. If you look at the events in places like South Korea, you see that there have been huge disasters. And I had a day, some of you may have seen the post that I put up about having physical altercations, unprovoked physical altercations during one day of the retrograde about more than a week ago. And I decided to draw cards about it, and I hadn't drawn tarot cards in a very long time, but in too long, because the tarot is a really good friend. But I drew cards, and what I saw was, I thought it was important enough to share so that other people could see it coming. So here we go. I'm going to start this with a prayer to Mars, which I'll record later and then overdub here. I'm going to show you in part the drawing that I did, and sometimes you'll be seeing me and sometimes you'll be seeing the drawing. Again, I'm going to do this whole thing in one take because I can't be bothered to make it perfect anymore. Magnanimous, unconquered, boisterous Mars, in darts rejoicing and in bloody wars, fierce and untamed, whose mighty power can make the strongest walls from their foundation shake. Mortal destroying king, defiled with gore, pleased with war's dreadful and tumultuous roar. Thee, human blood, and swords, and spears delight, in the dire ruin of mad savage fight. Stay furious contests and avenging strife, whose works with woe and bitter human life. To lovely Venus and to Bacchus yield, to Ceres give the weapons of the field. Encourage peace to gentle works inclined, and give abundance with benignant mind. I won't be speaking about each card in this reading. There are some that are very significant for me, especially the Knight of Wands and the Hermit. But every card in this reading colors the entire reading. For me, overall, if I were to summarize this reading in one or two sentences, I would say that there's a boisterous immaturity that causes us to lose control verbally and then to fight or to attack. And the attack can be not just attacking another person, it can be attacking a person in defending against an attack, where a defense becomes an assault. This is going to turn a lot of you off, and you don't have to watch this. This is our world. You know, things like this happen. A lot of people don't like the fact that some aspects, a lot of people don't like dark things. And I don't blame you. You know, dark things suck, but you have to see it. You don't have to. You do whatever you want, but it helps me to see the darkness, to work with the shadow in an effort to balance and then clear out and then choose the light. Once you see what is really dark, you can choose how you deal with it and how you relate to it. But if you don't see it, it has a tendency, like the unconscious, to control you. The configuration of this reading, I chose the pentagram because I wanted to work with the 5 elements. The 5 elements of Chinese medicine or Taoist medicine. There are 2 cycles within the 5 elements, and they both generate, control, overreact, and I guess, for lack of a better term, can explain or predict the movement of things in our universe, the movement of the energy around us, the people around us, ourselves as a microcosm of the universe. It's pretty interesting. So I thought it would be a good thing to draw cards on, or a good thing to lay out the cards to try to discern a direction of movement of the energy, because I was curious about what the energy of the next 2 to 3 weeks would be like. And this was somewhere starting around, I think January 5th, January 6th, somewhere around there. So I was looking ahead to like that would put us somewhere around the 20th or the 27th, almost through the end of the month. And this reading is still relevant, therefore. Thanks for sticking with me if you're still watching 6 minutes of my kind of slowly getting the words out. Worse than fucking Captain Kirk over here. All right, so the reading opens with the Knight of Wands. And let me just look at my notes. And those of you who don't want to wait around for me to look at my notes, you can swipe away now. So the Knight of Wands, yeah, okay, I shouldn't be saying that. So this is the myth of Bellerophon. The Knight of Wands, all knights, first of all, are young energy, young, exuberant energy, somewhere between, I would say, the age of like 16, 19, maybe early 20s, right? Late teens, early 20s, when you're really starting to come into your power. A saying about young men, especially like that, but all young people, because the cards don't have to be, these face cards, pages, knights, kings, queens, they don't have to be male or female. I know people read them that way. Things are what you see. Things are what you think they are. I don't see these cards as male or female. They can be anything. So when I say a knight, I'm seeing a lot of masculine energy, but not necessarily a male, or not necessarily not a male, or not a female, or whatever. So knights in that age of late teens, early 20s, they have the body of an adult starting like at 14, 15 in some cases, and the mind of a child until the age of 21 in some cases. So there's quite a lot of power there, and not a whole lot of discernment. And if you think about the sign of fire, I think you'll agree with me that it comes on really strong and it burns out really quickly. But while it's around, it can be it can be dangerous, it can be generative, and don't take those statements lightly, right? Those are extremes in our world. To generate energy, to generate another person, to start a process, to begin something is an extreme. There's nothing, and then you create something. That's an extreme. It's a turning point from nothing to something, from yin to yang, from cold to heat, from no existence to existence, from stillness to movement. And in the Knight of Wands, that turning can be seen in the symbol of the flame, the symbol of Pegasus. There's a symbol of death on the ground. All these things are associated with quick change. Pegasus, I won't go too much into this, but Pegasus was born out of the chopped up, decapitated body of Medusa, and Pegasus was almost put down by the gods, not entirely, but the gods had to show Bellerophon, who, in his arrogance, in his exuberance, presumed to make himself immortal after slaying that beast down there. I don't remember the name of it. Decided to fly to Olympus and claim his place as a full immortal. And the gods struck him down as he was flying over the ocean. They sent a horsefly to bite Pegasus, and Pegasus reared and threw Bellerophon off, and he hit the ocean and he drowned there. And that's a pretty quick way to just put someone down. Yeah, he died in the water, but that's a lot like the power of fire. It's a lot like the characteristic of fire, where fire can just suddenly change things, suddenly end things, or suddenly begin things. So when I see knights, I see oftentimes the beginning of a process, but it's a process that can burn out really quickly. And that's very much the characteristic of this time, is that, things may seem hot, they may seem really aggressive, it may at times feel like an assault is coming for you, but it's not going to last forever. In fact, it's going to be relatively short, and each one of those will turn fairly quickly. Each one of those moments can end really quickly. And in my case, I had 3 of them like right in a row, just like 1 or 2 minutes after each other, on the same block and then somewhere else. And that's very much the nature of this point in time. Things can be hot, they can be aggressive, they can be dangerous, they can be heavy, but if you can manage to stay in your body and not slip off into the actions of immaturity, into the actions of the center of the brain, the unconscious, which brings us to the Ace of Pentacles, because that card is the unconscious. There's Neptune sitting in the waters, Poseidon sitting in the waters. The water is the unconscious, and he's, half in, half out. So this is the emerging of ideas, the emerging of inspiration, the emerging of impetus, the emerging of starting something in the context of this reading from the unconscious. Things that bother you, that control you at the moment, the energy of the time, anger, humiliation, needing to prove to yourself that you are not weak, or that you are strong, or that everybody's going to be afraid of you no matter what it takes. That feeling, it's not a conscious thought. It's not something that we say to ourselves when we're in that moment. It's something that we find ourselves all of a sudden turned into, like it turns on within us, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, where did that come from? Well, it came from inside you. It came from your unconscious. If you allow yourself to get swept up in that emotional reaction, one of my favorite terms, the ER, emotional reaction, and you don't use your mental faculties, you don't rely on your discernment, you don't ask for the guidance of your higher self, the guidance of your higher mind, acting out of the unconscious can be hot and dangerous, and it can turn from sudden activity to no activity real quick. Or it can go the opposite way. It can go from no activity, nice peaceful day, walking along, all of a sudden somebody's trying to get on your case. So the Ace of Pentacles, we're moving on now. Another thing about the Ace of Pentacles, this is what my tarot teacher, Patty Canova, called the energy of what is about to unfold. This is Neptune, the unconscious. This is asking the question, who do you want to be? Do you want to be the person who reacts in a way that you regret, or that causes harm to people or harm to yourself? Do you want to be the person who has to say later, I see the ways in which I caused you harm, and I see the confusion and the pain that was behind my decision. I didn't know it at the time, but I see it now, and I ask your forgiveness. And if you can't forgive me, I ask that you forgive me in time. Do you want to be that person? Do you want to be sitting there asking for forgiveness, saying that prayer? Or do you want to be the person who says, I see the other person's intent to harm me, and I see the pain behind that decision. I see that person's confusion, that person's suffering, and I forgive that person. Behind the Ace of Pentacles, or coloring the energy, forming the energy of the Ace of Pentacles, is the Devil card. Let me see if I can find the Devil card. Card of the Devil gets a bad rap in the tarot, because all that Judeo-Christian. Let's see, who do I want to offend or not offend? Do I want to be in my higher mind right now, or do I want to just let fly? Because of all that Judeo-Christian stuff, right? They see a picture of the devil, and it's like, oh wow, that must be of the devil. Okay, so anyway, the card of the devil is card of addiction. It's the card of being bound through choice. If I can find the goddamn thing, you'll see that the people in the Devil card are bound by their necks, but their hands are actually free. So in that context, oh, and this is the only card in the tarot with no light in it. So in that context of being bound and still having choice. See, you can barely see that, I apologize, but maybe you can see here that Lucifer is holding, or actually Pan, not Lucifer. This depiction of Pan as Lucifer is holding these leashes, and the leashes are around the necks of, here's a woman and a man, or a female and a male figure. But look at their hands. Their hands are not bound. In fact, it looks like almost like they're dancing. And the implication is that in this card, the humans are there by choice. They could try to escape. Now, they might lose their limbs as they try to get out, but speaking as someone who has been to addiction and recovery at least twice, first time with nicotine, which was the devil, and the second time with alcohol, which was also the devil, but in my opinion, a smaller one, smaller than nicotine. Actually, it was harder for me to quit cigarettes. But speaking as someone who managed to break that bond and recover from addiction twice, I can tell you that when you try to break free of that, initially it feels like you're losing a lot of yourself. It feels like parts of yourself are being ripped off. But they grow back. We're like, a lot of people say I'm like a snowflake. I'm really more like a sea star. Cold and prickly. The Knight of Swords. Yeah. Castor and Pollux. The two warrior twins. I don't know that myth quite as well, because I guess I haven't read it because I'm not really interested in it, but the Knight of Swords is another young, boisterous, overly boisterous card. This is the Gemini. This is things that come on suddenly. It's also Mercury. It's also Uranus or Uranus. And it's also fast-moving energy. Not as fast as the card next to it, the Page of Swords. But the Knight of Swords is fast-moving energy. All the Knights are. Again, this is a card that can turn really, really quickly. The energy can transform very suddenly. For me, the Knight of Swords is here to remind us of that, to reinforce that. You know, two knights. I really feel two knights and a page. I'm really feeling that young energy, that late teen energy. Not even early 20s, just the late teen energy. To me, these are the cards of teenagers who are willing to fight. These are the cards of teenagers who carry knives, teenagers who carry things that burn. Doesn't have to be it's not just fire that burns. People have been attacked with lots of things. These are warnings about weapons. I know it's scary to hear that. You know, I feel frightened just hearing myself say that. But that's what's here. You know, these knights are holding things in their hands. These are not empty hands. It's not the hands of people who are, you know, dancing around, holding each other's hands, you know, gesturing, and they have weapons in their hands. And then there's the Page of Swords. The page is actually younger than the knight. Now the page is a pretty I don't want to say important card, but the page, one thing I learned about the page is that the Page of Swords, as he matures, he becomes the Hermit, and that's the next card. And the Hermit to me is, I think, the most important card in the deck, because that is where I get to end up if I keep my cool. That's where you get to end up if you act from your higher mind. You survive long enough, or you don't, you know, trash whatever, your job or your relationship or, you know, your health, and you make it into this creative period in old age where you have choice. You know, the Hermit is not a person who's working a day job or, you know, forced to freelance because he has to pay the rent. This is a person who chooses to live meagerly and has just what he needs. The Hermit is the card of the writer. It's the card of the person who, like me, likes to be at home and tend to the camp. The Hermit is a Virgo, but I'll be goddamned if that's not some Taurus energy in there, you know, liking to be comfortable, liking to be home. It doesn't have to be expensive or luxurious. It's just, you know, look, he's got robes, he's got light, he's got his sharp sickle. Yeah, a metal tool, which also can function as a weapon, which can cut someone in half, cut their head off, cut you to the quick. A sharp tongue, a sharp mind, a sharp wit. It's a pretty diverse symbol, isn't it? It's comforting to carry something like that around, you know, to know that no matter what the situation, whether you're trying to make it up a steep hill with a bum leg, that you can lean on this thing, stick it into the ground and lean on it, or that if a mountain lion comes at you, at least you go down fighting and maybe say something clever in the process. Tell my wife I love. Yeah. Okay. So back to the Page of Swords. You know, Page of Swords. There's a lot in there. And this is, well, I'll just tell you about it. So the Page of Swords is the fast thinker. It's a person who talks a lot, and at his worst, it's the energy of someone who mouths off and starts trouble. And that, for me, is like really, really strong late teen energy. Somebody who doesn't have the presence of mind, doesn't have the higher mind, doesn't have the consciousness yet. It's the energy of bullies. That's what this period is all about for me. You know, encountering bullies, people who know I'm scared and want to laugh in my face about it. Maybe you're experiencing something similar to that. I want to say in my defense, I'm not asking for this. I'm not going out there saying, you know, hey, you think you're a tough guy, or hey, you want to laugh at me? Go ahead, I dare you. I'm not going out I'm not talking to people. I'm minding my own business. That's it. They're coming to me, and it's unusual. It's unusual. And if you're having a similar experience, this video is for you. I hope you're not. But if you are, know that lots and lots and lots of people are having a similar experience to you. And confusion is natural. Confusion is understandable. It's also the card of the clairaudient. I'm a clairaudient. Sometimes there's just a surprising message that appears, a surprise download, you know. It just happens and pops up, and you go, wow, where did that come from? But it stops you in your tracks. You know, it stops whatever you're doing at the moment. You stop and you pay attention to that. You tune in and listen. Pages are extremely quick moving. They burn themselves out. I mean, it's not a reference to fire, but that's what they do. Pages burn themselves out, especially someone like this. Have you ever known like a young person who mouths off a lot? They can't last forever, and the older they get, into their 20s, their late 20s, whatever, the more it takes to sustain that level of bullying, that level of aggression. You know, people can't sustain it as long as they want to. Almost nobody can. I mean, sure, when you're in the moment, it feels like you can go forever, but trust me, you can't. You can't go forever. That climb up results in a sudden crash at some point for everyone. Yeah, sudden explosive turns for the worst between people. That's the Page of Swords. The energy's so hot that it burns itself out and turns into the Hermit card. Although it can interfere with the energy of the Hermit too. I'm sorry, I'm like quoting Patty Canova's words from her lectures directly. I don't mean to plagiarize. It's just that the information is good, you know, and I don't have a better phrasing for myself yet. I'm not trying to take on anybody's persona. I just finding what's valuable and trying to convey that. And here it is. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Yeah, I would say that the Page is a bully who feels inexhaustible, feels invincible, and the Knight is similar, but it's almost like a person who doesn't want to hear it. You know, they think they know everything already, and they think that older people, especially men, don't know anything. And, you know, sometimes they're right. The unformed identity of the Knight. Extremely mature. Okay, and then there's the Hermit. Like I said before, this is where the reading ends up. Some of the positions, according to the 5 elements, I think are significant. And I think some, you know, either they're not significant in terms of fire, earth, metal, water, and wood being the 5 elements, and how they generate each other, how they control each other. Either some of them are either not significant, or I'm not seeing the significance yet. You know, hey, I'm still learning. But the Hermit is in the wood position, And the wood element is especially important at a time at a time where anger is predominant, or frustration is predominant. The wood element is also, it's also, bile. It's bitterness in the mouth, spitting fire, spitting daggers out of your mouth. It's the will that can be willed, compared to the kidneys or the water element, which is the will that cannot be willed. It's genetic, you either have it or not. The kidney is the water element. With the liver, with the wood element, you can get it up if you really have to. You can muster it up. You can call on the deepest parts of your resources, almost the primal energy, almost the Jing. You can call up that constitutional energy that is your essence, if you're determined to do so. And if you don't, you'll accomplish whatever it is you want to accomplish. You'll get through whatever it is you want to get through. Yeah, you might lose a limb or two, but you'll get through it, because with the wood energy, you are determined to do it. The wood energy is kind of a energy of the small green shoots that push their way through the frozen ground when the spring is starting to become just a little bit warm, but the ground is still hard like ice. The Hermit card, it's kind of a dark card, but it's not residing in darkness. The Hermit is on his way to some other place, and that's a lot of what Mars retrograde feels like. We're still in the retrograde energy. It's called the shadow of the retrograde, even though Mars stationed direct on the 12th, which was like a bad hangover that day. I mean, it was like no energy was moving. Talk about frustration. It was frustration and depression, and it was trying to move forward and not being able to move forward. It was like all that shit happening at the same fucking time, man. Fuck that shit. I don't want to experience that if I don't have to. And so, certain parts of that day, I was just like, okay, this is just going to be the day, and I'm going to try my best to just accept and not struggle against it. Inside, I was saying, fuck this shit. Yeah. So I hope this reading has been interesting. Vastly imperfect, but it had to come out, just like the energy of Mars. I do think that this energy is going to linger until the late 20s, part of this month, and then it'll start to lift. Like my little Mars planetary model, I was looking around for something that was small enough that I could hold, that was round. I didn't have anything like actually round. So I thought, what can I use to represent Mars? Because I was going to show you guys, like, from the perspective of Earth, what it looks like when Mars retrogrades around Earth, but I can't do it because I have to move one finger really slow, one finger at one pace, and I have to move the Mars garlic bulb at a different pace, and I can't do it, I practiced that before the video. All right. Bye, guys.